Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Witching Hour. Welcome to Distorted Realities Origins audio cast, where we get to pick a topic and we discuss origins of a specific cryptid, legend, or anything related to the occult. Frank Wolves will be joining us today via phone. And once he gets on, we'll be able to get the show on the road. Without further ado, I guess it's time to cast a spell on you guys and get the show started.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble.
And there you have it, folks. And live on the phone is Mr. Frank Walls. Hey, Frank. Frank, we can't hear you. If you can just say hello to the people. Let's see. Well, he's having signal issues. He'll call back. So Witch Origins, right? What is it about Witch Origins that makes it interesting? What makes it very interesting is that there is. Oh, he's calling in right now. Hey, Frank.
Hey, J-Rock, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, doing good. I was just informing the viewers that you are not on set today, that you will be participating with us via phone.
Yep, that's correct. I'm here today. Sorry for that, guys. I apologize, but duty calls.
So I have to do double the duty right now. So I have an iPad watching the chat, and I'm manning the set. But you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So so today we're gonna talk about Witch Origins, right? And Frank, do me a favor. If you're not gonna speak, mute yourself, and then unmute yourself when you want to say something.
Okay.
Because we're getting feedback on the background.
Okay.
All right. So now on to the creepy music. There we go. So now we got some nice ambient background audio for you folks. So let's talk about it. Witches. What intrigues us about witches, right? I remember my sisters when they were young, they all at some point in their lives were dressed up as a witch, right? Typically we remember the witch as the embodiment of the witch in the Wizard of Oz, right? You remember that? Used to
You, my little dog, too.
And then, as we got older, we started learning more about the occult, and that opened up a whole new paradigm for what we know as witchcraft. So let's start off with the basics, right? What is a witch? And I think it's important that we start there because there's a lot of descriptions for witches, right? So a witch is essentially a person of human origin that has been bestowed or is born with the magical ability or is imbued with magical powers, right? The evil ones are the most common ones. There is such a thing as good witches, but typically we remember and know them as entities that resemble an old lady with long hair, gray hair, a mole on her nose, and her eyes is, a little shot up, glassed-eyed, and it makes for an interesting, depiction of what we perceive it to be, right? Frank, why don't you unmute yourself and just real quick recap what we just said in English and just say it in Spanish?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening. Y I'm gonna hablar un poco en español de lo que J-Rock acaba de hablar. Las brujas, pues todo el mundo conoce lo que son las brujas, mayormente siempre se describen como una señora mayor o una viejita, mayormente hay muchas historias que hablan de las brujas y dan mucho miedo, ¿no? Siempre como en cada sitio que uno ha vivido, siempre hay como una historia urbana de una brujita del pueblo o algo. O a veces de muchacho uno ve una viejita y en el barrio de nosotros había una, ¿no? No quiero decir el nombre porque mucha gente va a saber, pero había una que nosotros decíamos, parece una bruja, ¿verdad? Que siempre qué malo éramos de muchachos, ¿no?
Yeah, yeah.
Pero cosas así, ¿no? Entonces es algo bien histórico también porque yo sé que en la época de la Inquisición también pues se juzgaba mucho personas que tenían un lunar o personas que eran a veces tan muy inteligentes, a veces decían, oh, que es un brujo o una bruja, y a veces pues lamentablemente los mataban en esa época, pero pues también habían personas que trabajaban en esa época también con lo que es la magia, ¿no? Lo que se llama los druids, como los Celtic y todo eso, los celtas.
Ajá, los celtas.
Y exacto, y esa gente practicaba lo que era con raíces, medicina, encantamiento y cosas así. Y de ahí surge todo esta imaginación que tenemos con las brujas, que pues muchas veces son reales, como hablamos en el episodio 11, ¿no? Que hablamos de las brujas, de la lechuza.
Uh-huh.
Que eso es bien interesante. De hecho, uno de los fans nos envió un video, Kid Dan, de una lechuza, y no sé si tú tuviste la oportunidad de verlo, J-Rock.
Sí, yo lo vi.
Y eso sí que paraba pelo, de verdad, como uno dice. Daba mucho temor. De verdad que sí.
Right. So we're gonna pause there, Frank. If you could just mute yourself for a sec. Well, here's the problem. If you're a fan of the show and you're not watching this, I'm gonna put a spell on you.
That's a good one.
Double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cold and bubble.
That's funny. That's a good one. We should put a voodoo.
Yeah, so what you're not hearing is the sound effect I'm rolling. And the other thing is that if you are a fan of the show, tell your friends, your loved ones, and tell them to like and subscribe to the channel. More importantly, the phone lines are not going to be open. And if you're interested in just calling in, giving us a shout out, the number is 904-803-7327. Again, 1-904-803-7327. Right? So, witch origins. We already spoke about what is a witch, all right? And that's like the simplest form. However, this stuff gets real deep. Right? So, let's go and segue into, I was going to do the Macho Man onto the video scope, but really it's my notes. I'm going to look at my notes real quick and jump on.
Check your notes.
So the practice, right, or the origin of witchcraft is not clearly defined. All right. So when you look at witchcraft, it's in and of itself. Right? They are the closest that was defined are, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, but it's difficult to pinpoint which one was the oldest. But as far as the origin story, there's only about 4 of them that's considered witches, like the origin witches, right? The first one is Bridget Bishop, the first person executed for witchcraft during the Salem witch trials in 1692. But it gets a little deeper than that, right? You have Greek mythology, you have 2 of them. The first one is Circe, right? It's the witch in Homer's Odyssey, which is 800 BC, who can turn men into animals, right? I'm going to pronounce this name. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but Hecate is another Greek mythological, god or figure in Greek mythology. Who's considered the quintessential witch of the Greek gods, right? But the most prominent one, and the one we spoke about, Frank, which you're going to find interesting, is the Witch of Endor, So those are your. The only thing is that the Witch of Endor dates between 931 and 721 BC. And the Witch of Endor wasn't necessarily malevolent. It was just.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the Witch of Endor is in the Bible. You know, it's not all. You know what I mean? For all the listeners. So this is real things. You know, we're talking about it's in the book of the Bible. You know, so it's which are real and they still exist. Like right now, we have that lady called Brianna Abramovich, something like that. Abramovich. I don't know if you heard of her, but everybody in Hollywood knows her, and she has a thing. She was spirit cooking and a lot of that stuff. And there's another lady that I think she has her fingers tattooed in black ink or something. And
yeah. And her husband is like a very prominent
guru, like a guru of moda, right? De la moda.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that, yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, they're all over. They're all over. It's just we need to open your eyes, you know.
Right.
They could be next to you. You know what I mean? And you're not gonna know. I mean,
so just so that
it's like a religion, you know.
Just so that we're clear, so that people understand, we're not talking about the witches like you see them on TV. So this is where I want to get to. It's the term witchcraft. So being a witch as depicted in TV shows and as depicted in our minds as a child is not the same as the actual practice, right? So it's commonly misunderstood. But here's the thing. It's a practice of an art, right? In today's society, we understand that as different forms of magic, right? So you have apotropaic magic, you have black magic, ceremonial magic, divination, natural magic, necromancy, sex magic, shamanism. So these magics kind of fit in their own pockets.
Roots magic too, like roots. They do like with roots and plants and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's where is it? That falls under natural magic, and then you have evocation magic. You have sympathetic magic, you have theurgy and white magic, and then you have religions associated with the magic, right? And that's where you get into the voodoo cults and the in the occult side of things, right? And each one has its pros and its cons. Each one can be used for good and bad. So it's kind of like a broad spectrum of tools that a person who's considered a witch can have if they follow the practice. And I think that's the best way to word it, right? So the part
that's a great definition. A great definition.
So a practitioner of witchcraft, right, will typically apply that religious belief, follow whatever gods or deities or I guess figures that they would idolize. They would then lay reverence to them. They would invoke whatever they desire, or they would cast or put a hex on a person. So there's a lot of different ways we could approach this, but for all intents and purposes, that's the easiest way to look at. But let's look at the word witch, right? Because witch is actually an old English word, right? A lot of people don't know that. It actually means a male sorcerer, right? So when we look,
male,
yeah. So so for those of you who don't know, the study of words, right, is called etymology. And I'm no expert in this. I'm just looking at my notes and I'm referencing what I'm studying and gathering and learning, and I'm just sharing it with you guys. But etymology is the study of the formulation of words and where they originate from and what it actually meant before it got altered into what we know it today as our common language, right? So this word is over 1,000 years old, right? Its old English form was the compound Wicecraft, right? Which is WICCECRAEFT, from Wice, witch, right? It's how it's pronounced. And craft with an E is craft. The masculine form was Wicca, male sorcerer. So the origin point came from the word Wicca, right?
Wicca. I heard of it before, Wicca.
So then it goes into details, right? Where we say and Wicca or Wicca or Wicca were partly derived from Old English verb Wiccian, which means to practice witchcraft, right? So you also have the cognate word, right, which is called Wiccan, which was attested in the 13th century. The etymology going further is derived from other Germanic languages, and there are numerous possibilities of Indo-European roots on this word, right? So here's the cool thing: what do we call an old lady who's stubborn?
Stubborn?
Yeah, we call her an old hag.
An old hag. Oh, yeah, I heard that term before.
So that's another word, right? For witch.
For a witch?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and the original word was hectic.
What about a mother-in-law? That's a...
Listen, you have to,
I'm joking.
you have to be careful because they could, they can cast the spell on you and an eternal one. So yeah, and then you have the word hex, right? Hag and hex are linked words. The word hex is actually Dutch from the word hex, H-E-K-S. So the modern language is English, right, that we speak. They use the word witch, which is particularly referencing women, and the male practitioner of witchcraft is now called a wizard or a warlock. So now you understand.
There's any difference between warlock and the other one?
It's just a change in words. You can be a good warlock and be a bad wizard, right? It's just we associate the word wizard with good beings because you hear stories like King Arthur and the Knights of Justice, right?
Gotcha.
And there's always or Lord of the Rings where the wizard Gandalf is a good, he's the good one, right? But wizards can be evil, right? But the problem is that we take words and we appropriate the word to a specific character type. For example, a sorcerer is considered malevolent, bad, but a sorcerer can be good. Right. So
you're right.
So let's talk about before we continue. Why don't you just explain what we just went over, abbreviated, because there's a lot to process, right? I think we should just go over like the association between the types of magic and religion, and really talk about where the word comes from. And if you want, I can help you in between if you're missing something.
Yeah, okay, I do it. Let's go. Woo. Ok, vamos a hablar él estaba hablando de las brujas, un poco más de la historia de las brujas y de dónde provienen y cómo a través del tiempo se ha tenido diferentes nombres en el idioma inglés, ha tenido diferentes nombres en el cual también se refiere como a bruja. También hablamos de los diferentes tipos y, como te digo, también cómo las religiones, porque hay diferentes tipos de brujas, diferentes tipos de religiones. Muchas brujas pues tienen su culto o su religión. Yo hice una referencia sobre que hoy día todavía existe una señora que se llama Sabrina Abramovich, something like that, algo así creo que Hollywood la usa y ella hace spirit cooking y cosas así. Y todo lo que es astrología, diferentes tipos de brujas, ¿no? Lo que es astrología, bregando con raíces, medicinal.
O en sí en realidad lo que viene haciendo es cómo la práctica de la magia está relacionado a la religión.
A la religión, exacto. Diferentes religiones. Y pues hay brujos buenos y brujos malos, hay gente que se dedican a hacer el bien, hay otros que se dedican a hacer el mal, a hacer hechizos de amor, hechizos para dinero, suerte, de todo un poco, ¿no?
Sí.
Y así sucesivamente.
Y después tenemos lo que viene siendo la etimología de la palabra, el origen de la
Sí,
palabra.
el origen de la palabra bruja, que viene de lo que es el inglés, pero es diferente.
El inglés antiguo.
El inglés antiguo y diferentes palabras que significan lo mismo, significan bruja, pero en diferentes palabras, como hag, witch, wicca, y que prácticamente es lo mismo, pero eso a mí algo que él dijo, fue que él dijo que la palabra bruja significa, en realidad, brujo, en inglés, ¿no? La que es witch.
Sí.
Se refiere a hombre, no a mujer, pero sin embargo siempre se ha usado como mayormente como para mujeres, y cuando son hombres pues se le llama warlock o wizard, que en español sería hechicero o brujo, si no me equivoco.
Correcto.
Y muy interesante, de verdad que esto es algo que ha estado por años, y desde la época desde la era medieval, bueno, hasta en la Biblia que hablamos, en la Biblia se habla de la bruja de Endor, que es una historia bien peculiar en la Biblia. Imagínate qué tan viejo son las brujas, ¿no? Las hechiceras, para que siempre ha existido el balance entre lo bueno y lo malo, diferentes ¿no? Fuerzas que uno no puede ver, ¿no?
Yeah. So vamos ahora. Let's go into the beliefs about the practices, right? So now, how do witches use their power, right? And a lot of people seen the old movies where they're in a room in a cave or in a cottage that looks very disheveled, and they're holding a cauldron, and they're stirring a pot, and they're pouring all these herbs and spices and probably an arm or a leg in between, right? And they're performing these, they're opening up these incantations, and they start talking, right? Like, you know, I put a sound effect earlier. I'm just gonna play it one more time so that people can hear it.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble.
So, you know, double, double, boil in trouble. So they would use these words to you know, do an incantation with respects to what they were trying to do. So now, what were they trying to do? Well, that's very, very open, right? Because it depends on what your practice was. You had curses, spells, you would do hexes, you would do, you know, even blessings. You can bestow blessings, believe it or not, as a witch upon someone. You would remove the curse, or you would exorcise something away that can negatively impact somebody, right? So how do they do these things? Well, historically, we know that energy exists everywhere, right? So they weren't just manifesting from the gods, but they was using Earth itself, the magnetic energy, the electrical energy. They were using runes and stones of all types, so like quartz and gold and silver and you name it. They had something in their shelves. They would tell you, well, you know what, give me a frog's foot, give me three of these types of flowers, and they would make these concoctions, right? And that's how they would go about creating these potions and different various forms of pieces, right? Sometimes, if you look at, for example, the voodoo culture, we know today something called the voodoo doll. They would take a piece of your hair or something that you wore, or something that you love so much, an object, and they would take it, so.
Sorry to interrupt you. You know, they still do that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's why if you go to a the Botanica store,
you're going too far. You're going too far ahead. We want to hit the Spanish stuff later.
What I'm saying, that at those places, like they sell like stuff for rituals, and also they sell like love spell potions, stuff like that. And it's like a bottle. And he said, love spell potion, use this, pray for this, and even some candles and stuff. And they have like the prayer in the back, and you just turn it on and pray. And so they still use that. That's the funny thing, like it still is. They make
No,
profit on it.
yeah, that you're absolutely right. And in the older time periods, that was called an apothecary. I hope I'm not butchering that because I have always had a hard time pronouncing that. An apothecary, right? And basically, it's kind of like the same thing. Whenever you needed something, a plant, an herb, you would go there and then you would put it together and create whatever potions or spells you needed. So it's very true what Frank is saying is just that in the Hispanic culture, we call it a botanica, and you wouldn't just get stuff for magic or for voodoo rituals. You get stuff for even for your religion. If you're Christian, Catholic, whatever it is you're following, you can go there and buy a statue and buy some crucifixes. So they have everything, something for everyone. I think in a botanica, right?
Yeah, yeah, they got for
So
every religion they have something there. Oh yeah.
right, so then you have the witchcraft that we've kind of broken down into various segments, but then you have the folk healers, right? These are the shamans, the priests, the people that took care of their villages and used their wisdom and extraordinary magical abilities to protect their village, to take care of their people, right? But this was what they call cunning folk, right? It's considered white magic, or at white or apotropic magic, right? In today's society, there's not a lot of that. It's very hidden and very recessed. Today's magic heavily relies on the darker side of the occult, right? And then you have the one that no one really talks about outside of what we call the Haitian culture, which is called necromancy, bringing the dead back up. That's still a practice in voodoo. They call
Like
it
the zombie,
zombie. That's
the
exactly
zombie,
right.
zombie. Like they use the French zombie.
Right. So you have all these different different ways of viewing magic, right? And so what are my takes on this? Well, magic again, for me, growing up as a kid watching fantasy, movies, I always saw so for example, Hecate, right? In Greek mythology, it's three women that are fused by the sides, and basically they had the vision of seeing past, present, and future. And if you remember the movie The Beastmasters, there's three witches. One is blind, one is deaf, and one can't talk. And then basically, like but they each embodied that Greek version of that witch, that's described there. But I used to watch all this stuff, and I found an allure and amazement of how these things were in I guess in moving pictures, right? But then as we got older, right, we started learning about the actual seriousness of this because I didn't even know about it. But you ended up going now ahead into the year 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts, right? And you had these groups of I guess this group of people called the Puritans, and they were very devout, very religious individuals, and there's this thing that came out of it called the Salem witch trials, where people were accused of witchcraft and of performing curses and hexes, and they would put people on trial, and 90% of the time they would end up unaliving the individual that was accused. And this happened for a lot of years. More than 200 people were accused. 30 of them were found guilty, and 19 of them were executed. Okay. So
That's a lot of people.
and that's 14 women and 5 men. One other man died under torture after refusing to enter a plea. right? At least 5 people died in the disease-ridden jails, but it wasn't due to the accusation. It was rather, they weren't taking care of the cells, and the inmates got infected, and they got sick, and they died. So in Salem, a lot of towns were, a lot of arrests were made around the area of Salem and within Salem. So the village is known as Danvers, and it's the center of the Salem town, right? And then you have Andover and Topsfield. They used to hold these grand jury trials, and basically it was considered a capital crime. Witchcraft was something that people used to look at, and essentially, they would pay a hefty price, which was their lives more often than not. So,
The
so
Salem witches, that's something big here too in the U.S.
yeah.
The witches from Salem.
Mhm.
That was something.
So
big
I
over
actually went there, and I saw it, and
there. Right.
they today in today's society they really embody the spirit of the witchcraft. They have a lot of stores that sell a lot of trinkets and different magic
Wow.
shops and stuff, and they kind of like celebrated to honor those that were accused, uh, in I guess watching, and I guess going through this, right? Um, so they're at the 300th anniversary. Uh, they actually dedicated a statue in the park at Salem, in the Salem Memorial Park, and essentially, the people they absolved 6 people. So the courts kind of like turned around and said these people need to be absolved, even though they're dead, of the accusation, because we cannot, So even years later, they were absolved of becoming witches or being witches in
Wow.
practice. So all in all, these executions were recorded and cataloged, and unfortunately, there was a lot of political context, because at that time period, religion kind of governed the whole piece, right? So yeah, so I think that all in all, that is the latest serious event that took place. Um, and in today's time, what you're seeing is that the practice is now more acceptable, it's more glorified, it's more entertained, I guess, and it's highly respected in different cultures, in different locations, and different beliefs. Uh, and that's what
Yeah.
we're dealing with today.
Now you can go to Hot Topic and you'll find a lot of witchcraft books over there too.
Yeah,
You
you
got
can.
and some bookstores as well. You can find books about like hand reading and stuff like that, or tarot reading. Um, it's everywhere, everywhere.
Yeah, so it's practice. So now let's talk about the Native American culture, right? So you have different Native American tribes that do study some form of magic in the form of we call it spiritualism, right? Because I don't know what they would call the magic, but they do use magic to read into the future, to get in tune with their animal spirits, to find purpose and meaning in their lives, and to protect their loved ones, right? That is a form of witchcraft by American norms. It's just not viewed that way because of the stigma and, I guess, the correlation with Native Americans being under attack, right?
The famous shaman, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
They're,
but yeah, so
they're saying that in the Indian American Native religion too. I heard that the shamans can turn into animals as well, like wolves, bears, stuff
right,
like that.
right. So that kind of covers some of the major historical pieces we covered over the explanation. I don't know if you want to go over that in Spanish.
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, what was tell me the segment, la parte que dijiste primero y la traduzco completa.
La historia de Salem.
De Salem, yeah. En Estados Unidos hay una parte que se llama Salem,
Que de Massachusetts.
en Massachusetts, yeah. Salem es un pueblo, ¿no?
Sí,
Un pueblito.
un pueblito en Massachusetts.
Un pueblito en Massachusetts, acá en los Estados Unidos, en el cual es bien famoso y reconocido por el juicio de las brujas de Salem. Fueron mujeres, ¿verdad? Mayormente no eran
Eran
hombres, ¿no?
14 mujeres y 5 hombres.
14 mujeres y 5 hombres. Y ellas fueron pues juzgadas y lamentablemente pues los mataron, ¿no? Los mataron por practicar lo que se llama su religión, prácticamente, porque cada cual tiene derecho a practicar lo que uno crea, ¿no? ¿Sabes? Yo no juzgo a nadie, aquí nosotros no juzgamos a nadie, ¿me entiendes? Pero lamentablemente en esa época pues no era así, sabemos que la influencia de la Iglesia Católica era bien grande y esas cosas pues no eran del agrado de mucha gente, ¿no? Y lamentablemente pues esas personas las ejecutaron. Y creo que después de un tiempo, pues ahora, hace poco creo que le quitaron como la culpa, ¿no?
Sí, le quitaron la culpa. How you say that? They exonerated them.
Los exoneraron y le quitaron como los cargos. Ya están muertos, ya de qué sirve, ¿verdad? Pero como que como en cuestión de que, mira, ¿sabes? No estaban mal ellos en hacer eso, ¿verdad? Pero pues, al menos, ¿verdad?
Right.
Pues nunca es tarde, ¿verdad?
Yeah, so now I want to talk about, and before this slips my head, right? So you know what happens when they're looking for someone that's very hard and elusive to find? You know what they call that?
How?
A witch hunt.
Oh, witch hunt. Yeah. You're right.
So you see, La Bruja's laughing.
They're doing a witch hunt in La Bruja. They used to hunt witches in the past. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they will go with pitchfork, and stakes and torches to find the witches to burn them in the stake. Yeah.
Right. So now let's talk about witchcraft in the Hispanic culture, because it's very different, right? I think it gets creepier in Spanish culture.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we spoke about La Bruja del Caño, right? Who's not necessarily a witch, right? It's more like a spirit.
Like a spirit
entity, but they call her La Bruja because she's so associated with accidents that happen there.
Exactly.
But then you have, like in Santo Domingo, remember Edwin and his wife, how they got into a call with us and they told us about their experience, how these or El Socullon in Trinidad and Tobago, how they were talking about how these entities or these witches, or known as witches.
Or la ciguapa.
Well, the ciguapa is not necessarily a witch.
It's like an entity.
It is an entity, but it's not a witch. So we're talking about the practitioner of the witchcraft, right? Like the actual practice. So, like for example, what Edwin and Yvette described, that these ladies flying in a roof, he goes into the house and feeds on the blood of the children that are not baptized.
Yeah.
So you notice how that goes into a different type of subject matter, right? There is a tie to feed on someone that's not, protected by God through baptism.
Exactly.
So, and then you have other types of witch practices in Spanish, where it's about sustenance, right? It's about having energy or making a deal with a demonic spirit so that you can attain the things you want. And we hear that a lot more in the Spanish side of things. In the newer English stuff and even the older English stuff, a lot of it was very plain Jane, right? Like that's what they were brought into. That's how either they were born. You had different types, but there was never nothing behind it that would justify the reason for doing it rather than it being part of their life and their culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in the Hispanic culture, however, there is a rhyme and a reason, right? You know, I'll give you an example. I was broke all my life and I was tired of it. One day I made a deal with the devil and I said, I want fame and rich. I want fortune. I want everything. I want it all. And, you know,
And that's how you started the podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
I heard that's how a lot of artists do it. Like a lot of they call these people the Illuminati, all that BS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they say like that's how they do it. You know, like they sold their soul for fame. You know, and sometimes they have to sacrifice a loving one. You know what I mean? Somebody that
Yeah. So
they care or whatever. That's how they become who they are. You know what I mean?
Right,
And I heard that from not only from conspiracy theories, stuff like that. I've heard that from people that are into that world, like voodoo and witchcraft and all that, and then they say it's true. That's how it works. You know what I mean? If you bring sacrifice, you get stuff, but at the end, whoever you sacrificing stuff to is he wants your soul. Your soul is his to take. You know what I mean?
So yeah, that's kind of like where it goes. You're doing what's called the law of equivalent exchange. We can give you everything you want, but it has to be of equal or more value. And nothing is more valuable than your soul, according to
Exactly.
the occult, right? And that's where the lines get drawn, right? Then you have witchcraft in Africa. Hearing noise. Okay, you have witchcraft that's practiced in Africa. This is more tribal. In Cameroon, the Maka people, they practice a witchcraft known as Jambe, right? Which is transformative, killing and healing type of magic, where you have to commit sacrifices or you have to perform really vile acts to appease whoever you're worshiping. In Africa, in Central Africa Republic, hundreds of people were convicted of witchcraft. So it's still a crime to practice witchcraft in certain parts of Africa.
You know, there's a tribe in Africa. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, my bad. There's a tribe in Africa that the bigger the man has the belly, the more attractive the man is. I think I belong to that village. I saw that in a documentary.
Well, is that witchcraft or is that
No,
or is it witchcraft or is it beercraft?
I don't know, but it's they have a big belly, those guys. But the more belly, the more attractive you are in that village.
So
That's
check this out. In the Republic of Congo, right? There's witnesses that found a disturbing trend of child witchcraft accusations where kids are being accused of the practice. So yeah, you have a lot of things going on. So this is everywhere, by the way, all over the world, right? So this is not just being practiced in one specific place. It's just different in every location, in every culture, and it's interpreted differently and practiced differently. So the craziest one or the most interesting one for me was Asian witchcraft. Because how can I word it? You'll find that they practice more black magic for good than they do white magic for bad. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so
There's different type of magic, like you said before, you know, and I guess all depends on motive. I think maybe the way they teach them, because they probably have to go to school to learn this. It should be not like a Harry Potter thing, you know what I mean?
Right.
but normally it's passed down. At least in the Hispanic family and stuff like that, they're normally passed down by family. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, my grandmother was a witch, and now his granddaughter, she has
You
she grew up with
inherited.
she
Yeah.
inherited the powers or whatever, or
Right.
like she has the thing, you know, or her mother, and that's what I have heard, and like it goes like that, like in families to families, and yeah, I mean,
So yeah.
interesting.
So I mean, a lot of this is now transcended. We now see it on TV every day. The first time I ever saw it was in The Wizard of Oz, and what a creepy witch, right?
The green one, the green
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. You know.
You know, I heard that when they were doing that part of that movie, like she got burned with the special effects fire or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. She actually did. Um, but yeah,
Wow.
so the practice is still there. We glorify the practice a little bit more as a society. We've accepted it. Um, we as a society can see benefit in it when things are not going so well. Um, and we use it in a different way. So back then, for those of you who don't know, prior to what we call modern medicine, you know, we were naturalist, herbalist, right? We dabbled with the practice of taking different herbs and spices and putting them together to create healing tonics and potions, right? But it's kind of like the same thing, right? Uh, it is a practice that's, no matter what, I don't think this will ever go away. I think it's going to be more and more adopted. Um, I think it's one of those cautionary things to, if you're involved in this, be very mindful of how you use it. Not because you're going to summon a golem or a demon, but rather because you can, karma's a thing, and you can really bring about something bad to yourself in the process, right? All in all, though, I think this kind of covers witches overall. What do you think, Frank?
It's very interesting. I found this. If you, I'm gonna read you this. I don't know if you say, I don't even mind you saying something about it, but it says the first three witches, the first three to be accused of witchcraft were Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne.
Yes.
Tituba was an obvious choice. Wow.
Yeah, that was in 1692. That was in Salem.
In Salem. Wow, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. Even the name sounds like witches, right?
Yeah, so I mean that's the crazy part about it. The name really matches the location. If you ever go to Salem, Massachusetts, what you're gonna find is that it feels very picturesque, or an inviting place for that kind of culture, right? It's the only way I can describe it.
And you heard that last name Osborne, and you got that guy Ozzy Osbourne, you know, the rocker.
Yeah, yeah. So let's segue into something more entertaining, right? What's your favorite witch movie or series of all time?
Oh, I used to watch that. She just passed away. One of the actresses. It was what was that TV series? Witchet, Witchet, something like that. Witchet.
Oh, you're talking about Shannon Dorothy. Rest in peace, Shannon Dorothy from Beverly Hills
Yeah.
90210. She was what was the call that show? Oh my
It was
god.
Witch.
No,
Witchet?
no, it wasn't called. I'll tell you what the show is right now. I'm looking it up. I wasn't a big fan of that specific show.
Charm.
Charmed. That's what it was.
There you go.
So you had so that was your favorite.
No, that was one of my favorite. I had another one, and it was, remember that lady that used to move the nose?
Oh, Bewitched.
Yeah.
Wow,
That one.
you're going way back there, buddy. You're gonna get one of these.
Oh, my pretty little dog, too.
So I'm gonna give you one that a lot of people don't remember. It's an late 80s flick. It was called Warlock with Adrian Sands, if I remember. Let me just take a look.
Warlock.
Yeah, it was called Julian Sands, not Adrian. Julian Sands. Sadly, Julian Sands disappeared mysteriously and was found dead in a desert in one of the, I think it was California or Arizona, like in a deserted area.
That's weird. That's very
So
weird.
he played the warlock, and the other one that I liked was the movie The Craft.
The Craft, great movie. Great movie.
It did a true depiction of witches. No, I just thought it was super fucking cool. Pardon my language. It was a cool flick. Then there's the older films that a lot of people don't know about. Let me just look up the name because the movie had Tim Curry. Remember Tim Curry?
Yeah.
So he did a movie where he plays a witch. And I thought it was so freaking cool.
One of my favorite was The Vampire Diaries. No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, I was gonna say, what does that have to do with witches? So the movie was in 1986. It was called The Worst Witch.
The Worst Witch.
Yeah, with Tim Curry. It was a great, cool movie. It was a kids movie, but it was awesome. Yeah. So those movies were awesome, and then of course, you had a lot of different movies that were more comedic. Like The Witches of Eastwick, with Cher and I think her name was what's her name? Michelle Pfeiffer. You had the Covenant, right?
Mhm.
But you had a lot of cool movies that had witchcraft, but it was more. I call it. I use the term. It was more romanticized, right? It wasn't necessarily all that great. Hi, Noelia. Welcome aboard. It's good to see that you're on the call. Well, that you're on the show, not on the call. But yeah, it's the witchcraft overall is a very open practice. It's a very diverse practice. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the practice itself, and I think it's just very interesting, right? I think what we should do, Frank, because I know you gotta cut it short because you have to go to the jungles of Peru and get a mapinguari.
No, I'm going to see a pelacata. You ever heard about the pelacata?
Yeah.
We need to touch that in the show for real. It's been in the Peru. It's been crazy over there.
There you go. So that's something to talk about. Maybe with dinner with Stephen King.
It was from Stephen King. Yeah, remember that she was like a gypsy witch kind of style, and she put a curse on him, and he started becoming like he was very fat, and he started becoming really, 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 really skinny.
Yes. And then we
That was
so Corrales said, "Oh, another movie, Hocus Pocus, with Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker, I think it was."
there. You go.
So yeah, there was a couple of them. There was a couple of good ones.
Mhm.
All in all, witchcraft is a very interesting practice. It's one of those things where we tell people, it's good on paper, it looks good on TV, but in reality, it's a lot darker, a lot gritty, and you should be very careful and mindful of how you practice this stuff.
Mm.
Hey, Coral, if you're on, can you confirm that you can hear us well? Or Noelia, can you do that? On the
Hi
chat.
to everybody. Hi to everybody in the chat.
So Frank Walls is not with me today. He's out looking for mapinguari. But he says hi to all of you that are watching, and we appreciate your love and support. We got 9 viewers
Always,
today
always.
on the call. We have the number out here for those of you who want to call. If you have a story to tell about a bruja or something that piques your interest about witches in the practice, or if you have a question, you could ask in the chat or you can call in.
Share your story, guys. Share your story with us, man. Sure, don't be afraid.
So I got a story to tell before we end the call, or the session for today. We had in my neighborhood there was a lady that we used to call La Bruja. God bless her soul though, because it's just we were scared of her when we were kids, because she resembled everything that a witch would look like, literally. And it just so happens that as we got older, we found her to be a very nice lady. She was just tough, you know. And I felt bad because I kind of used to thank you, Noelia. We used to like jump on her car and we would scream her name and she would show out the window. Like she knew what we were calling her, the bruja, which was really fucked up. But as we got older, we hit it off. But I will tell you a very scary experience that I had. So, you know, there are practitioners of Santeria and voodoo who are what we call empaths. They can feel your energy. They can kind of absorb what you're feeling. So one day I'm walking to work and there's this lady saying hi to me and she's smiling, right? And I'm like, okay, fine. And she had a shopping cart. It just so happened she bumped into me and the candle broke. And this lady started speaking in different tongues,
Wow.
pointing at me. And this is in New York City, by the way. And I'm like, holy crap. And I kind of knew something was off, you know, like, and then that same week, I'm in an elevator and there's this lady who is, very familiar to me. I knew her, an older, much older lady. And she put her hand on my shoulder and started crying.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I didn't know you was going through so much. Like, you're so young. Why are you dealing with this? And I'm like, how the hell you know what I'm going through, right? Like, you start putting it together. And that the term for that is called an empath, a person with the ability to sense and perceive your energy. You channel
Oh,
it
yeah.
to the body. That is a form of witchcraft and a form of magic, believe it or not. You know? So let's talk about Parson. Oh, okay. So I'll tell you. Here's a good one, Frank. I know you got 3 minutes left, Frank. Shit.
Sorry.
It's all
Don't
right.
worry.
It's all right. It's all right. You're getting a lot of love here, Frank, on the chat. So there's a
Thank
gentleman.
you. Thank you.
There's a gentleman named when I was a kid. We had moved. It was just at the time. It was just me and my older brother. We were the only ones. My mom was pregnant at the time with the oldest one of the girls, right? And it just so happens that we had moved to this apartment. Remember that apartment that I told you about in the ghost stories that blew up in a party?
Yeah.
That door blew up.
That
So
one, yeah.
that same apartment was lived by a person, right? Who was into the occult. This guy, we got pictures of him to this day, and I'm gonna ask my grandma to see if she can get it to me, or send it to me so I can show it. But every time you saw this guy's face, his eyes was always red. Like you could never take a picture in any condition, and his eyes weren't red; they were glaring red. So the thing is, when we moved, the gentleman in his little, you know, those Kango style hats that they just like the brim is only in the front. So he came and knocked on the door, you know, and he goes, encuentra a la señora. And I said, yeah, okay. So he goes, mira, lo que le quiero avisar que tienen que echarle una bendición a esta casa. And we like, in my head, I didn't know. I was a kid. This is stuff that my mom reiterated to me because I remember him being in front of the door. And I guess the guy was involved in the occult. So that apartment, for many years, we lived in that apartment. That apartment was the stuff of nightmares. And I'm going to stop it there because I'm going to tell some of my stories in AI regarding that apartment. And I think that's
You should do that.
all in all, though, it was a great story in terms of like what I experienced. When I say great, it was great now that I'm into this stuff. Like, man, I can't believe I went through that, right? It's not fun when it happens, but in retrospect, that gentleman left something behind in that apartment.
Mm-hmm. That's the remember when they do santeria, witchcraft, stuff like that, they invoke a lot of spirits. They invoke a lot. That's pretty much what it is. They invoke spirits, and they do offerings to them. Like they put candy, they put
Right.
food,
So I'll
they
tell you
put
what.
liquor, stuff like that. So I mean, maybe one of those entities stay there. You know what I mean? And you know, it's sad, but it happens. You know.
So Frank, it's 9 o'clock. I'm gonna play a soundbite and send you up and have you say goodbye. Unless you want to stay, if you could stay and talk, that's fine. You tell me.
But I can't because the noise is gonna bother you. I know it's gonna.
All right, so
it's noisy over here.
let me play the sound clip real quick one more time for the people.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble.
And with that, Frank, you want to say your goodbyes until Sunday?
Yeah, gracias a todos por lo que están sintonizando en el chat, escuchándonos a todos. No sean tímidos, llamen. Cuando hacemos estas cosas queremos compartir su historia. Los veré el domingo. Gracias por su tiempo. And I'm going to say in English now. Hey guys, thank you for being in the chat. Thank you for watching the show. Don't be afraid. Call. Yeah, we're doing this for you to expose your stories, your paranormal activity stuff that happened to you in the past, recently, doesn't matter. Feel free to call and tell us. I mean, really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being part of this show. And thank you, and see you Sunday. You know how it is. Sunday, every time at 5, live.
Alrighty, Frank. So, Frank, you have a good rest of your night. I'm going to sign off right after this. I hang up. And let's get ready for season finale.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Thank you. Thank you, J Rock. You're awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks. So, Frank signed off. And so what do I want to say? I guess we all want to impart words. I guess for me, as for those of you involved in the occult, or in any kind of practice that involves witchcraft, bear in mind that it requires a certain amount of belief, and that these things can work against you if done incorrectly. Also understand that we live in a time where things are very dark and grim and uncertain, and to amplify that through the use of witchcraft would be very not advisable given this time. But there is a good in every bad, and there's a bad in every good. And when used appropriately, you can make some amazing things happen. So just keep that in mind. The most important piece I want to share with you guys is that I appreciate every single one of you who have participated on the call, who have been involved with us day in, day out. Frank and I thank you so much. And yeah, Sunday's going to be episode 12, where we have 3 or 4 amazing videos we're going to show. The last thing I want to mention is check the polls on YouTube. We have a poll happening in the community section of our channel, where you can pick your favorite alien, your favorite cryptid, and the one that has the highest votes is going to get viewed one more time. So with that being said, J Rock is signing off. Thank you again. And in the words of the old witch of the Wizard of Oz,
You, my little dog, too.
take care, guys. Good night.